This is Land of Havilah, 1 Kings 12. Israel was unified under the first three kings, Saul, David, and Solomon. But because Solomon was unfaithful, Yahweh says he'll now strip 10 tribes away from the house of David and give them to Jeroboam, son of Nebat. This will leave Rehoboam of the house of David with only the 2 southern tribes. The 2 kings have similar names, so let's remember it'll be Rehoboam, son of Solomon, of the house of David in the south, and Jeroboam in the north. At the start of this chapter, Jeroboam is still in Egypt because Solomon wanted to kill him, and Solomon's son Rehoboam is about to coronate himself in Shechem. He intends to claim all Israel like his father and grandfather, but Yahweh has other plans. Verse 1. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had come to Shechem to make him king. When Jeroboam the son of Nebat heard of it, for he was yet in Egypt, where he had fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam lived in Egypt, and they sent and called him. Comment: the prophet Ahijah told Jeroboam in the last chapter that he would be the king of the northern 10 tribes, but not until Solomon passed away. Solomon intended to kill Jeroboam, so Jeroboam fled to Egypt. Now that Solomon's dead, Jeroboam can return to Israel with the expectation that he'll eventually be king. Jeroboam is a mighty man of valor, 1 Kings 11:28. In other words, he's a capable and well-known man. The people of the north are still familiar with him even after his absence in Egypt. At this coronation ceremony, Jeroboam and his fellow northerners are about to approach Rehoboam with a demand, still in verse 3. Jeroboam and all the assembly of Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam, saying, Your father made our yoke difficult. Now therefore make the hard service of your father and his heavy yoke which he put on us lighter, and we will serve you. Comment: the northerners are fed up with the heavy service and taxes that Solomon put on them. Before they crown his son Rehoboam, they want assurances that he'll lighten up. So Rehoboam has a decision to make. Will he lighten their load or not? He wants to think about it as we go to verse 5. He said to them, Depart for 3 days, then come back to me. The people departed. King Rehoboam took counsel with the old men who had stood before Solomon his father while he yet lived, saying, What counsel do you give me to answer these people? They replied, If you will be a servant to this people today, and will serve them, and will answer them with good words, then they will be your servants forever. Comment: Solomon's old advisors say, Lighten up on them, and they won't give you any trouble. Verse 8. But Rehoboam abandoned the counsel of the old men which they had given him, and took counsel with the young men who had grown up with him, who stood before him. He said to them, What counsel do you give that we may answer these people who have spoken to me, saying, Make the yoke that your father put on us lighter? The young men who had grown up with him said to him, Tell these people who spoke to you, saying, Your father made our yoke heavy, but make it lighter to us. Tell them, My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. Now my father burdened you with a heavy yoke, but I will add to your yoke. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. Comment: Rehoboam didn't put his faith in his father's older counselors. He went with the bad advice of his young friends. The young friends wanted Rehoboam to exert maximum power and authority. The younger generation of advisors thinks the older generation is out of touch, when in fact it's the other way around. Job 12:12, quote, Wisdom is with the aged, and with long life comes understanding, end quote. Rehoboam's young friends want him to answer harshly. The 3rd day has come as we go to verse 12. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the 3rd day, as the king asked, saying, Come to me again the 3rd day. The king answered the people roughly, and abandoned the counsel of the old men which they had given him, and spoke to them according to the counsel of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. So the king didn't listen to the people, for it was a thing brought about from Yahweh, that he might establish his word, which Yahweh spoke by Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat. Comment: in the last chapter, Ahijah the prophet told Jeroboam that Yahweh was going to divide the kingdom and give most of it to him. We don't know whether Rehoboam knows about the prophecy or not. Now Yahweh is intentionally letting Rehoboam give a harsh answer to the people so that his prophecy of a divided kingdom will be established. Verse 16. When all Israel saw that the king didn't listen to them, the people answered the king, saying, "What portion have we in David? We don't have an inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, Israel. Now see to your own house, David." So Israel departed to their tents. Comment, so there we just had the split between the north and the south. The northerners are walking out on Rehoboam because he promised to enforce heavy burdens. When Saul was king, his government was made up largely of Benjamites, men of his own tribe. When David and Solomon were king, their governments were largely made up of Judites, men of their own tribe, including men of their own close family. So the men of the north started to feel left out, not only because of the distance from Jerusalem, but also because of underrepresentation in the royal court. The north rebelled once before under David, under Sheba the son of Bichri, who was a Benjamite. But David put that down very quickly thanks to his nephews leading the military at that time, Amasa, Joab, and Abishai. So this rift between north and south has been brewing at least as far back as 2 generations, and now Yahweh has allowed it to blow up again. So right now the north is without a king. They're rejecting Rehoboam. Verse 17. But as for the children of Israel who lived in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. Comment, coming up, Rehoboam is going to try to put the north back into subjection. Verse 18. Then King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the men subject to forced labor, and all Israel stoned him to death with stones. King Rehoboam hurried to get himself up to his chariot to flee to Jerusalem. Comment, Rehoboam didn't know how serious the situation was. Instead of calling in the military to bring back order, he sent just one man, probably the one man who was hated most, Adoram, the manager of forced labor. He was the very icon of hard service. When Rehoboam saw that the northerners were angry enough to kill Adoram, he finally realized the severity of the situation and fled back to Jerusalem. Verse 19. So Israel rebelled against David's house to this day. Comment, the text is referring to the north as Israel and to the south as Judah. And here we have a time stamp in verse 19. It says Israel rebelled against David's house to this day, indicating that at the time this was written, the kingdom was still divided. Verse 20. When all Israel heard that Jeroboam had returned, they sent and called him to the congregation and made him king over all Israel. Comment, Jeroboam is now king of the north, according to the word that the prophet Ahijah spoke in the last chapter. Still in verse 20. There was no one who followed David's house except for the tribe of Judah only. When Rehoboam had come to Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 chosen men who were warriors to fight against the house of Israel to bring the kingdom again to Rehoboam the son of Solomon. Comment, according to verse 20, only the house of Judah followed Rehoboam, but then in verse 21, Rehoboam was quickly able to recruit the tribe of Benjamin as well to attack the north, so in no time Rehoboam was able to add Benjamin to his kingdom. Coming up, Yahweh is about to give Rehoboam his first direct guidance. It'll be through the prophet Shemaiah. Apparently, Ahijah isn't safe in the house of David because he delivered the word of division. So from this point, we only find Ahijah prophesying to Jeroboam, verse 22. But the word of God came to Shemaiah, the man of God, saying, Speak to Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, king of Judah, and to all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and to the rest of the people, saying, Yahweh says, You shall not go up or fight against your brothers, the children of Israel. Everyone return to his house, for this thing is from me. So they listened to Yahweh's word and returned and went their way according to Yahweh's word. Comment, so that's that. The kingdom is split. Now turning attention to Jeroboam in the north, verse 25. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim and lived in it, and he went out from there and built Penuel. Comment, Shechem and Penuel have been around a long time in the Old Testament already, but Jeroboam is building them up, and he's going to live in Shechem. Now coming up, Jeroboam is not consulting Yahweh about anything. He's just trusting in his own imaginations. Verse 26. Jeroboam said in his heart, Now the kingdom will return to David's house. If this people goes up to offer sacrifices in Yahweh's house at Jerusalem, then the heart of this people will turn again to their Lord, even to Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they will kill me and return to Rehoboam, king of Judah. Comment: in the last chapter, by the word of the prophet Ahijah, Yahweh said he would hand over the north to Jeroboam, and it happened just now, against all odds. But strangely, that didn't instill Jeroboam with any faith. Already he's afraid he's going to lose the kingdom that Yahweh has given him, though Yahweh has already said that if he's faithful, he'll make him a sure house, like the house of David, 1 Kings 11:38. But Jeroboam has no trust in that word. Yahweh commanded in the law of Moses that 3 times per year all Israel should go to Jerusalem, which is in Benjamin, in Rehoboam's kingdom. Jeroboam doesn't like that concept because he believes that the people have to travel out of his own kingdom to Jerusalem to worship. It's going to make his own kingdom second class. It'll make the people sentimental for their old attachment to the house of David, to Rehoboam. But Yahweh has already said that, in effect, this won't be a problem. As long as Jeroboam and his offspring are faithful to Yahweh, his kingdom and dynasty will be secure. He'll have a sure house, as Yahweh put it. But Jeroboam has no faith in that. He's going to take things into his own hands and create a new religion which will be devoid of Yahweh to keep his people out of Jerusalem. Verse 28. So the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold, and he said to them, "It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Look and behold your gods, Israel, which brought you up out of the land of Egypt." He set the one in Bethel and put the other in Dan. Comment: he set one golden calf in Bethel, which was about 10 miles north of Jerusalem, and one in Dan, which was in the far north, and he claims that the golden calves are the gods that brought them out of Egypt. Verse 30. This thing became a sin, for the people went even as far as Dan to worship before the one there. Comment: coming up, Jeroboam didn't stop with the golden calves. It'll be any and every god but Yahweh. Jeroboam will be tolerant of any religion except the worship of Yahweh. Verse 31. He made houses of high places. Comment: he made temples to other gods on tops of hills and mountains. This was no different than what Solomon had already done on the mountain just outside Jerusalem, 1 Kings 11:7, the thing that made Yahweh so angry. Still in verse 31. And made priests from among all the people who were not of the sons of Levi. Comment: by Yahweh's command, priests should only come from the Aaronic Levites, Numbers 18:7, but Jeroboam's completely abandoning anything to do with Yahweh. Verse 38. Jeroboam ordered a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like the feast that is in Judah, and he went up to the altar. Comment: this again is Jeroboam making his own rules. He's replacing Yahweh's feast of the 7th month, Leviticus 23:34, with a feast of his own making in the 8th month. He's simply making it up as he goes. Still in verse 32. He did so in Bethel, sacrificing to the calves that he had made, and he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places that he had made. He went up to the altar which he had made in Bethel on the 15th day in the 8th month, even in the month which he had devised of his own heart. And he ordained a feast for the children of Israel, and went up to the altar to burn incense. Comment: long ago Yahweh promised blessings for obedience and disaster for disobedience, Leviticus 26, and nothing about that has changed. But Jeroboam has confidence in his own plans. 1 Kings 13 is next, and you can find that quickly at landofhavilah.net, 1 Kings 13. This is the map of 1 Kings 12. Jerusalem is here. Jeroboam put a golden calf in Bethel, 10 miles north of Jerusalem, and Dan in the extreme north, about 100 miles north of Jerusalem. He built up Shechem for his own home, and on the other side of the Jordan, he built up Penuel. 1 Kings 13 is next.